Welcome to the Refurbishment Mastery podcast with me, Martin Rapley. If you're a property investor who is worried about paying too much for your next property, concerned that you don't know how to manage a refurb, or scared that you will be ripped off by a builder, then this is for you. In this podcast, I share over 30 years of experience of managing refurbishments and conversions to help you make more profit, save your time, and ultimately enjoy the process. On with the podcast. So, welcome to this week's episode where I am delighted to be joined by Tammy Cardoso. I think I pronounced that right. I hope I've pronounced that right. I've known Tammy now probably for a couple of years or so, and seen her grow her property portfolio significantly based around refurbishment, of course. And then we had a little bit of a chat a few weeks ago, and she disclosed some of the things she was up to now. And I thought, well, it would be brilliant to have Tammy along and actually have a little bit of a chat with her and find out a little bit more about her, what she's doing in property and her aspirations and where she's going forward. So, yeah, thanks very much for joining me, Tammy. It'll be really good to start if you could just perhaps introduce yourself and tell us, where you've come from and how you got into property.
Thank you so much, Martin, for having me on the podcast. So my name is Tammy. I am originally from Brazil. So I've been in the UK for just under 20 years now. I moved here when I was 17 years old on my own, just to stay for a year. And then a year turned into nearly 20 now. But I've been in property for only 2 years. Prior to that, I worked in the corporate world and the food industry. So I went to uni in 2011 and graduated as a biomedical scientist. After that, I went straight into a graduate scheme with Morrison's Manufacturing, which is a sister company to the retailer. And I stayed with them for pretty much most of my time. I think it was about 7 years in the end, and then another 3 years with a different company. Got to a point where I felt like I reached a ceiling in my industry and in what I did. Didn't really like that. The challenges every day were very similar, which didn't really excite me anymore. And I did something that I would never recommend to anyone. However, it has worked for me, and I'll explain why in a little bit. So I handed in my notice, and then my partner Danny and I decided to start our journey in property. So handed in my notice. I had 3 months to work there still. Within those 3 months, we purchased our first property in auction. Started our training, and 2 years down the line, we are on our 8th project now. So it's been a very, very busy couple of years. And the reason why it worked well for me is because this is very down to personality. So both my partner Danny and I were the type of people that we don't really work well within our comfort zone. And the moment that we threw ourselves out of this comfort zone, then we started to grow. So for me, it was very important to have that sense of urgency to make it work. But yeah, this is not something I would recommend to anyone.
It is interesting that because I was running a construction business and wound that up and kind of tried to get a consultancy business off the ground and threw myself into property investing at the same time. And I say to so many people, just be really careful giving up your regular income to jump into property. And I made it doubly hard by jumping into property and trying to set up another business at the same time. And actually, what ended up happening was we got nowhere in property because I spent all of my energies actually setting up a business. And it was nearly a year later, we said, well, hold on, we've now paid for all of this property training and not actually done anything with it. And we then switched over and then started working on the property and then started picking up property, reasonably quickly by then. So it's I think you're right though. It's different things for different people. So it's right for some people, and not for others. And I think, you said to me before we started the call, you very much wanted to get going with refurbishments early on. So how did you see your strategies back in those days?
When we first started, we were really, really interested in flipping properties. So we've always had this idea of working in areas where there was a lot of dilapidated properties, basically, and we wanted to bring those properties back into a good enough standard for that community. So flips was the ideal strategy for us because it's something that we could maximize our cash, the cash that we put into it, but also it gave us that satisfaction of helping communities by improving the standard of housing. But also, I love interior design, and for me, being able to implement that into something that makes me money really helped choose this strategy. So improving layouts, making something look beautiful and transforming into a dream for a family to move into was one of the main drivers to go into flips. We have moved away from flips slightly since then, but it's something that is still on the cards for us.
Whereabouts is all of this in the UK?
So we started in Leeds. So we are based in Southport.
Yeah.
But when we started business, our intention was to move to Leeds. So Danny and I went to university in Leeds. I lived there for 8 years. We both really loved the city. It has so much opportunities in terms of property. So that was our aim. The market works a lot better in Leeds for flips than it does in Southport. So hence why we decided to start there. Since then, we've decided to stay where we are. So we still have one rental, one HMO in Leeds that we are going to keep, but we've moved all of our operations and purchasing to the northwest now, which is a little bit closer to us.
Yes, yes, interesting. And some people say invest on your doorstep. Other people say invest a long way away. I invest about an hour and 20 minutes, hour and 30 minutes from home, which is a bit of a stretch, but I get so much more for my money. But of
Yeah.
course, if there's opportunities on your doorstep as well, then become really knowledgeable on that,
Mhm.
and buy on your doorstep. And
Yeah.
and we first met through a mutual contact actually, Sad Hussein. I've been working with Sad Hussein in one way or another for probably 8 years or so. And some people will know Sad Hussein, prolific investor based in the Midlands.
Mhm.
One of the nicest guys in property. I can't say the nicest because there's so many really nice people, but definitely right up there as one of the nicest guys in property. And you were on one of his training courses when we first met.
Mhm.
Why did you decide to do some training?
Uh, Different reasons with really, and yeah, I agree with everything that you've said about Saj. I think if it wasn't for yourself, Saj, and some of the other mentors within the training course, we wouldn't be anywhere near where we are today. So we are very grateful. It's been a fantastic journey with this mentorship. But I think I would always recommend training to anyone starting property. It does so much for you. It speeds up your learning curve. It builds up your confidence because you start knowing what you are doing, and it reduces hesitation, which is so important in this industry. The support network and the community as well that you get from training organizations is just worth its weight in gold. Not only for the support itself, but you put a question out there and you have different perspectives, and it helps you to make up your own mind about how you want to run things, which is very important. Accountability has been one of the main things that we have benefited from in terms of training. We have calls with yourself every week and other mentors, and this helps to keep us on track because it's so easy, isn't it, when you don't have that accountability to just
Hmm.
leave things for tomorrow and the next day. And having a group in the form of mentorship or a training community the accountability part has been second to none for us because it really helped us keep progressing. And it saves you money in the long run. If you get the right training with the right people, it will get further, faster, and cheaper as well. So it does save you money in the long run.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all of that. I did training through Property Investors Network. What's that now, 12, 13 years ago or so. And in fact, that's how I first met Saj, because he was prolific in Property Investors Network. And I totally agree. Someone asked me a few years after I'd done some training, I'd carried on in a graduate scheme, I'd spent money on networking and other little spin-offs. And someone said to me, well, how much do you think you've spent on training? And I said, well, just off the top of my head, we're well over £20,000 and probably closer to 30. And they said, "Oh my word, that's a huge amount of money." And I said, "But I think every single deal I've done, I've made more than £30,000 from."
Yeah.
So, there's no way I would have done as many deals if I hadn't done invested in some training. Or I say we because Sarah and I actually did training together, my wife. So it's I think it's a no-brainer, and it's about finding the right group of people, the right trainer, the style that resonates for you. I work with a number of other trainers and bulk my services into their into their communities, and they all want different things from me. Ultimately, it's the same content, but they've got their models in different ways, set up in different ways. So I'd say to anyone thinking about training, look at the different options. Training is delivered in different ways. Some people want in-room classroom type things. Other trainers are doing a lot more remotely and on Zoom. Some of them love an away day to the Bahamas or something like that, and you get a 1 week intensive training. Do the one that works for you. But I think, as Tammy said, I'd thoroughly recommend investing in some training to get started. And one of the things that Tammy mentioned was that I was one of the mentors. So I'm a mentor, one of many mentors on Saj's training, and I run a session on a Monday night, and Tammy and Danny came along and started asking me questions. So you in fact, in the early days, you were the ones that I knew would be there every week.
Yeah.
And over the time I've been running that session for Saj, there's been a number of people that I could regularly see there. But I knew I could see that you were making an effort to be there every week, and you were sending me questions in advance. So what was your mindset behind all of that?
I think that as we've just mentioned, like choosing the right training for you is very, very important. However, there's no training out there that will make you do the things that you are learning. So you have to have that mindset. You have to, before you even go into any industry and you look at paying for training, you need to be in the mindset of this is what I want to get out of it. And you have to have your goals and you have to have your objectives. Otherwise, you're going to absorb all that training and you're going to learn all of that, but it's only you that can do the doing. And
Yeah.
without the doing, you don't get anywhere. And that training will mean nothing to you. So I think the mindset of being ready to absorb all that information like a sponge, but also to use it for action. So knowledge is powerful, but there's a lot of very knowledgeable people that haven't done anything with that knowledge. So to me, knowledge paired with action is the key to success.
Yes. Yeah. Totally agree with all of that. So I assume when you first came to that very first session with me, you
Mhm.
didn't really know anything about refurbishment and refurbishing properties at all. You were going from scratch, is that right? Or had you got some kind of background somewhere along the way that we didn't ever unpack?
Martin, I didn't even know what an architrave was. And I think we've had this conversation before. And when I say that we threw ourselves into the deep end, we actually really, really did. And I remember the first time I heard the word architrave, and I was like, what on earth is this? Is this some sort of like foreign term, and then that's where we were at when we first started training on that very first call that we had with you.
Interesting. So, just for anyone listening, an architrave is that pretty moulding that goes around your door frame.
Yeah.
So, and don't be embarrassed about this, Tammy, because lots of people don't know this, and this is why I think some people are hesitant to get going with refurbishments, and they're scared of talking to builders
Mhm.
because there is a language, and it's not a language to baffle people, but there's terminology relating to the products we've got in our properties.
Yeah.
And yeah, every day you open the doors and you walk through them, but you don't necessarily need to know the name of how it's made up. So don't be worried about that. And actually, that was really where I came from when I first started training property investors. But although many years ago I'd been training in a past career, um, and it was from this realization that what I knew within construction was not general knowledge
Mhm.
outside of construction. And I was working with a lot of property owners, private property owners that didn't understand how construction worked at all. And the first thing I needed to do was unpack that and keep that simple. So yeah, for anyone listening to this, if you really are starting from scratch, well, that's exactly where Tammy was when she started working with me. And what were those early projects that you did? You said you were doing some flips. What kind of projects were you doing? What kind of size? How big were they? What kind of works?
So they've been very similar, all the flips that we've done. So we started with a 3-bed terrace house that we purchased in auction. In terms of refurb, it was just the run of the mill really. We've done new flooring, new kitchen, new bathroom, new roof, which we did have an issue with that roof. We had to redo it. Um, and just redecoration throughout. And then after that, we went into a bigger property, still a 3-bed, but a detached 300-year-old cottage, which you will remember this one because it causes a lot of headache. And we also did another cottage. It's a terrace, but it's classed as a cottage. It's a very quirky property. And again, the same new roof, new kitchen, new bathroom. We've installed a second toilet as well downstairs. Um, we've gone into, which is something we hadn't done before, we've refurbished a storage unit. So the house used to be 2 houses.
Mhm.
One was a one up, one down. And when the 2 houses were merged many years ago, they've left the downstairs as a storage unit. So it was inhabitable when we purchased the property, and we transformed that into a quite large, I think 21 square meters kitchen. So
Yeah,
that was
nice.
something I hadn't done before. Um, but yeah, so those were the 3 flips that we started with.
Yeah. So, and then again, grassroots, nothing massive, but enough to get some experience and get going and learn the other terminology, as well as just arbitrage, other things like that.
Yeah.
How are you financing these projects? Did you have was this with your own funds or did you have investors or lenders?
So the first one we financed ourselves. So Dan is the main investor for the company. He does have another business as well. And the first one was financed with cash. The second one was financed with the proceedings of the first one.
Mm,
And the third one was half and half cash and proceedings. We
yes.
are at the moment for our HMOs, we are using buy-to-lets and bridges as well as cash.
Yes. Okay. And so you're now evolving into HMOs to hold for the longer term, I presume.
We are, and also in terms of the financing part, which is something that we wanted to do from the beginning, we wanted to learn and become experts. And before we can start going and asking private investors to invest in our company. So this is where we're at now. We are becoming experts in what we do and building our credibility within the industry. So as we are expanding, we will need investors like anybody else. So for us, it's just a natural progression. But we want just that expertise under our belts first before we move into that part.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that's coming across here is there is some planned structure here. It's not dive in with both feet and see how we get on, which unfortunately, there's a lot of people doing that and coming a cropper as a result. There is some planning here. And what's coming out of this, as most people listening to this podcast will know, is this is not a get rich quick scheme.
Oh no.
It's it's take some time and work it through.
Yes, I think I learned two things. When I left my job in the corporate world, I thought at first property is a get rich quick scheme. And as this before I even started in property, as I started to do my due diligence and my research, I quickly realized that was not the case. However, what I was still very naive about was that I'm going to leave my 9 to 5 and I'm going to have freedom. And that has been the biggest mistake I've made since starting property, which is not a bad thing, but I think I had this misconception that I was going to be my own boss and have freedom. And you do have a lot more freedom. You can choose when you work and the hours that you work, but the work is still there to be done. So you might get your freedom during the week, but you are on the computer or at viewings at the weekend. So the time that you spend is very similar, if not more, but you just have the freedom to juggle it. So those are the two things that I had this misconception about the industry when I first started.
Yes, yeah, it doesn't surprise me. I speak to so many people, with that. Let's jumping in to make sure that you have everything you need. Now, in a number of these podcasts, you would have heard me talk about my community, and I want to ensure that you know how you can join that community. Obviously, within these podcasts, there's a limit to the detail I can go into the recording, and of course, a lot of things are very generic. So, what if you had access to join me on a Zoom call for 90 minutes every single week in a group coaching environment? You could get your questions answered whenever they come up and learn from other members' questions. Plus, you also get 10 hours of training videos, an HMO refurbishment case study, some sample documents and checklists that will help you run your projects far more effectively. Membership of my community is just £89 a month. You get the first month free, and you can also cancel anytime after that. Plus, as a listener of this podcast, there's a promo code to help you save £20 every single month that you remain a member. So just make a note of VIP discount 20, VIP discount 20, all in capital letters, and put that into the checkout. You'll find the checkout on my website, www.refurbishmentmastery.com. Scroll down the page, you'll find the link for the Project Management Accelerator. Use the promo code VIP discount 20 and you'll be signed up at just £69 a month. I look forward to seeing you in that community very, very soon. Now back to the podcast. And when you first started, did you feel that you were going to be just going to struggle working with builders, and were you intimidated by this whole thing about refurbishing, or was it an excitement on the horizon for you?
Marty, I'm going to share something with you that I don't think I've ever shared in any podcasts or even on my social media, but I had quite a lot of issues working with males within
Yeah.
my corporate career. And as a result of that, I brought that with me when I started in property. So I really struggled working with builders in the beginning. And I thought that it was because of my my past, which I went to therapy for it. I did CBT, which it's a great thing. I think a lot of people see therapy as like a negative and a weakness, but it helps you so much. But not only that, I learned to realize, and that's through working with you, that the problem was not the builders, and the problem was not how they were working for us, but the problem was in the, and I know we're probably going to get into this a little bit more, but it was in how I was portraying myself in terms of communication, clarity, and what I actually wanted. And I didn't learn that until I started working with you, and I'm still learning that because it's a journey. But yeah, I had massive issues working with builders in the beginning.
And so, how are you with builders now then? 2 years down the line.
There's still issues, but like some of them, for I'll give you one example. We've worked with one contractor on over 3 projects, and we had no problems. And then over 2 projects, and on the third project, we had to let him go because there were issues over issues and over issues, and you can't control what happens in people's personal lives. So sometimes something will happen, and they won't be able to deliver the standard that you're used to. So you
Mm,
just have to, in a way, you have to have a plan for that. A plan to be disappointed and act on it and move on. But what, in terms of all the learnings, I think one thing is communication, communication and clarity.
yeah,
Having clarity with your builder, they know exactly what to expect. So now we work with schedule of works, which is another thing that I never heard of before I started working with you. And it just builds up that expectation, and they know exactly what they need to deliver to meet your expectations. Whereas before, it was more like, oh yeah, can you do this? Oh yeah, you do that. Actually, I've changed my mind.
mm,
To a builder, that's seen as risk.
yeah.
And I've learned that by working with you.
Yes, yeah, and builders, and I've said to so many people already that builders, like all of us, they're running a business. They're trying to do their best, and if we come across to them as a wishy-washy client, then how can they deliver the service? If we don't know what we want at the start, how are we going to know if we've got what we wanted when it's all finished? And with my experience on the other side, I was seeing clients doing that to me and
Mhm.
thinking this isn't right. Something's got to change, and that's really where everything came from. So where do you see yourself going? What kind of projects are you going to evolve into? You're just going to go bigger and bigger and bigger, or are you just going to settle down at HMOs or something like that?
This is going to sound very boring and probably a little bit disappointing, but we we feel like we're only starting our journeys with HM. We are only starting our journey
Yeah,
all together because we've only been doing this for 2 years. But we really want to um, become experts on HMOs. So
yeah,
this, it could take us 5 years, it could take us 10 years, but we really want to learn everything that there is to learn and have had it delivered. So have had that hands-on experience.
yeah,
So I think we see ourselves doing a lot more HMOs in the next few years. Before we move into anything else. We don't actively look for any other types of deals. However, we've agreed this that we're not going to close ourselves off to just HMOs if a fantastic opportunity comes along for a block of flats or something a little bit more creative, but we are primarily just looking for and looking to work with HMOs.
yeah. And are those just taking standard residential properties and converting them, or are you thinking about converting commercial? And are you likely to go to sui generis as well, the 7 beds and more?
Well, we do like to give ourselves a lot of trouble along the way. So all 4 HMOs that we are working on now are either commercial to residential or illegal HMOs that are not illegal anymore,
Yeah.
or actually all 4 of them are going to be sui generis, but they didn't start that way. So yeah, we don't like simple things in here. I wish we did.
The thing is, and for anyone listening, in some respects, the more complications there are, the more opportunity there is to make something from it. And I would look at most of the deals I've done, there have been problems beyond just needing a refurbishment. And I periodically do a webinar effectively saying, you will not make money from refurbishing a property unless you can do other things as well, unless you can solve other challenges that are in there, and take illegal HMOs and things with no planning, and adds more value than just the straight refurbishment.
Yeah,
And
and
then
sorry,
yeah,
Matt.
go on.
Yeah,
Go on.
just on that as well. I mean, we wouldn't be doing this and putting ourselves into through so much trouble if we didn't have a community around us, like yourselves, like Saj and the other mentors, because we know we encounter a problem and we can rely on you and all the other mentors for advice. And it's a very quick turnaround. So
Mm.
we're not worried about taking on these types of challenges because we know that we have the support network around us to turn them around.
So the key thing here that I'm getting from you here is you didn't just do some training and go off and into the big wide world. You've carried on, in a training in a support environment to, to
Yes.
help you grow further.
Yes, and
Um,
I don't think we can see ourselves without a mentor. The types of mentorships that we might go on to in the future might be different depending on where we are at in our journey. But we're massive believers of having a mentor at each stage of your journey.
Yeah, it's just interesting. Someone asked me the other day why I carried on paying for training, and the answer was very much the same. Really, things evolve. I'm dropping some training I was doing that finishes in a couple of months' time, but I've already got the replacement for that because there's there's another opening in the business where you need support with something else, be that the a strategy or be that related to your tenant types or finding out something about a new town or whatever. There's always things to learn. And in that respect, something when we were talking a few weeks ago, you mentioned to me that you were running a networking meeting, and so going from 2 years ago doing nothing, now running a networking meeting. Tell us all about that, because this is a networking meeting I personally don't know much about, but it will come to light why I don't know much about it when Tammy explains it.
Well, I do hope that you come to speak at one because it's going to be a great honor to have you there, especially given our relationship and how you helped me over the
Yeah.
past 2 years. But so I'm hosting a networking event called Hard Hats to Heels. That's my one is based in Manchester. Hard Hats to Heels is a women-focused property networking community, which is probably why Martin's not involved in it, designed to bring women together across all areas of property, really. So it's all about connection, collaboration, and creating space where women feel genuinely supported and empowered. Because a lot of us don't, when we go to mixed networking events, a lot of us have different levels of confidence in what we do. So I host the Manchester one. However, we are in just over 5 locations now. The network is growing massively, which is an amazing thing. So we've got our Birmingham, which is the flagship branch, Leeds, Nottingham, London, and we are expanding into five new locations, I think, by the end of the year. So each Hard Hats event, it's different. It's very welcoming and it's professional, but it's relaxed. We have Prosecco, which is a great thing. We have really, really nice food. We attract all sorts of people from beginners to experienced. Um, we are actually attracting female contractors as well, which is a great thing
Mm.
to see, and then getting their name out there in the industry. So it's something I'm very, very proud about, this community.
I mean, the really interesting thing here is I've come through a construction industry since 1985. I left school and went into construction. And interestingly, one of the first mentors I had was actually a lady. So I worked for a building contractor and she was a quantity surveyor and she taught me for the first year or so. But by and large, construction, and certainly construction on site, was always male dominated. So, I very much came through an industry where any ladies they were secretaries and admin. And then slowly, every now and again, someone would turn up. And it always struck me that it was always weird. I always found it a little bit weird going to work
Mhm.
because I was at home heavily involved, where it was all pretty much 50-50. And then you go to work and it was pretty much 95-5 male dominated. And even when I came into property, it was still lots more men in property than ladies. and whereas now I'm starting to see it's balancing out, and I think giving you're empowering ladies to get out there because you know I believe, and I believed it years ago, that it needed to be more balanced. And we all bring different things to the table. And I have to confess that sometimes we do need, a calming, a calming person or a female perspective. We're delivering properties that men and ladies are living in. Why should we not have a female perspective as to what that property should look like at the end of the day? So yeah, really, really pleased to hear what's going on there, and be delighted to come along and speak. As I'm not, I'll bring a hard hat, but I'm not going to bring my heels.
That's fine. For you, I'll make an exception.
Oh, great. But yeah, certainly for any of the ladies listening, that might be something to look into, and I'll get you some contact details for that. So just to kind of wrap up. But well, actually, I just wanted to say on the networking side of things, it's so good to see you giving back and starting to share and empower other people and get other people excited with it. And I was much the same. I started running a networking meeting, and I was desperately out of my comfort zone the first night. But you get into it and you start to get credibility. We were just talking about a bit of credibility before we came live, and getting your name out there. And in property, that's something that everyone's got to do. I'm not saying networking meetings are the right thing for everyone to be hosting, but getting your name out there is definitely definitely where I'd recommend anyone go, if they want to, if they want to make something from this. We've talked about where you want to go in the next few years. Where do you think the market generally is going in the next few years? I know this is a real woolly question because it's all a bit of a guess, but what are your thoughts?
This is, I've for me, this one. So when we look at the market, like in terms of house prices, for example, I think what I'm thinking is probably what everybody's thinking, which is the consensus is that we should be expecting a growth, a rise nationwide. I think maybe areas more expensive like London, we might see a bit of a flat line, but this is what I think everyone is thinking. So it's very difficult. So I will give you the opinion of the experts on this one. And in terms of affordability, I think we've had the last drop in February, and we're at now 4.5. So again, there is suggestions that we're going to see further cuts down to 3.75 by the end of the year, which would be really, really good. However, when you look at the potential 3.75 and you compare it to the times of the pandemic, for example, where the rates were a lot lower, I think it's still a big challenge for anyone buying properties in terms of affordability when you compare those two times in history. So, and that paired up with not the so drastic changes that we've seen in wages, for example. So even though, what I'm trying to say, I'll try and summarize this. So even though we are seeing positive changes, I think there's still challenges with it based on where we came from, when the rates were very low. And given the affordability is not as high for everybody else because salaries are not following the trend, it still gives a massive challenge for the industry.
Yes, yeah, I'd agree with all that. So yeah, and there is no definitive answer to this.
No.
All we can do is ask people, talk around, get ideas, and form our own, our own little viewpoint in there. I've got a mentor who gives me steers and ideas, and I share that with my community on a regular basis. And yeah, we'll continue to do that because that's not the training I've given up actually. So I've still got a mentor on the business side of things and the property side of things. So yeah, well, it's been really good for you to join me today. I wondered if you do you want to finish with a couple of tips? Any top tips you've learned in the last couple of years?
Yeah, 100%. So I've got two tips that I recommend to everybody. So the first one is get the right education. The right education is worth its weight in gold, but do your due diligence when choosing a mentor as well, because everyone works in different ways, like
Yeah.
you've pointed it out. Um, the second tip is always surround yourself with people that are 10 to 20 steps ahead of you. Because what I have found, and a lot of people that I have spoken to, we are in a very fortunate industry, Martin, where people that are genuinely doing well, they want to see others doing well as well. I know
Yes.
there is competition, but above all the competition, there is a lot of collaboration.
Yeah.
And in the sense that we want the professionals within our industry to be better. So we have a better industry altogether. So
Mm.
always surround yourself with people that are ahead of you because they are the ones that are going to inspire you and teach you as well because they've walked that path.
Yeah. Makes total sense. Yeah. Concur with all of that. So, yeah, thank you very much for that. I'll obviously put some contact details for Tammy in the show notes, but just for those that are listening audio only, what's the best way for people to get hold of you?
So I'm really trying to raise my social media profile like many of us in the industry are at the moment. So I do hang around a lot on Instagram and LinkedIn. So the
Okay.
best ways are Instagram and LinkedIn. So on Instagram is brick and beam underscore LTD and LinkedIn is Tammy Cardoso.
Okay. Excellent. Brick and Beam is your business
Yes.
uh, of yeah, your investment business. So Brick and Beam on LinkedIn and Tammy Cardoso on Instagram.
Yes, and
So
you'll find all the details for Hard Hats to Heels on my both on my LinkedIn and Brick and Beam Instagram account as well.
excellent. So yeah, all welcome to get in touch with Tammy if there's anything else you want to talk about there, or indeed go along to any of those networking meetings, her one in Manchester or any of the other ones. So yeah, it's been great talking to you today. We could have carried on for ages, obviously. Lots more things we could talk about, and maybe we can do another one, another recording sometime in the future, and a little bit more of an update as to how things are going. But it's been great talking to you today. Thanks very much for spending some time with me. And yeah, I look forward to continuing to work with you and seeing you grow your business in the future. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Martin. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this podcast. Please do like, share, and leave a comment where you can. If you need any guidance or advice with anything to do with your refurbishments or conversions, then don't hesitate to reach out. You can book a free call with me by clicking on the link at the top of my website, refurbishmentmastery.com. There's other ways you can contact me in the show notes as well. I look forward to speaking to you again soon.